Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. And our next guest is Faiez Jacobs. He's wearing a different hat this time. He is not going to be talking pure politics, or perhaps, I guess, every discussion we do have with him does have the implications of politics. We're going to be talking about something different today, and it really has to do with the boy child. And we're going to be looking, I presume, the 16 days of activism of no violence against women and children. And I guess the boy child falls into that category as well. Faiez Jacobs is member of the National Assembly of South Africa, and he's here to talk to us about something a little different. And that, of course, is the Peace Walk for Raising a Boy Child initiative, which I understand is going to happen on the 9th of December 2023. Assalamu alaikum to you, Faiez. Welcome to the program. And why is this so important?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and greetings to everybody. I wish I could be live on the viewing, but I'm just live from Parliament via the phone. This is a very important initiative for us. 16 days of activism. I think there's a adequate focus on gender-based violence and the importance of creating awareness of gender equality. But the reason why I'm focusing on the boy child, especially in Anova Park in the Cape Flats area, I'm working with a lot of NGOs, relief agencies, where we're saying that the boy child must also help. You know, a lot of the times mothers reproduce inequality by giving preference to the boy child, by giving more attention to the boy child. And so we almost raise the boys in a very patriarchal, very traditional way, and we use traditional ways. We use religion to reinforce the stereotypes. I think what we are trying to do is affirm the boy child, ensure that they do take responsibility, ensure that they do own up, and they play an equal role of from a very young age, understand the importance of gender equality. And why I'm focusing is on this, because there's a lot of single female-headed households on the Cape Flats. Fathers are absent, fathers are not paying their maintenance, and so a lot of boys don't grow up with father figures. And so that for me is very important. I'm rallying a lot of men that have time and effort, that can say, yes, we are ready to own up, stand up and be counted, and also be mentors and be father figures for our communities. And in that way, we hope that we can break the cycle of reproducing the patriarchy. So that's essentially the walk. We want to encourage all men, especially fathers, especially those that can come and join us, and let's show positive role models amongst our communities. Sometimes we have so much bad stereotypes, and so I think this march is about affirming the boy child, ensuring that they play a responsible role, and ensuring that we keep ourselves accountable, especially men, because we are the perpetrators of many of this abuse patriarchy.
And sadly, Faiez, you talk about the Cape Flats, and we know that gangsterism is rife in certain parts of the Western Cape. But these issues don't only perpetrate in the poorer areas or in the underprivileged areas, not only in the Cape Flats, but globally. They are endemic in the wealthier and the more affluent families and societies as well. And let's understand why that happens and how do we address it in those societies as well. Because if we don't, we're just going to have this very vicious cycle of very poor role models and very broken young men growing up and breaking society and communities, breaking them down even further.
While it's not a class issue, the poor and the working class communities bear the brunt. So, I mean, I work in that Manavo Park, Cape Flats areas where, on average, a weekend there's 30 senseless killings, murders, gang-related murders, and it's mainly perpetrated by young men. So they don't have role models. They're getting themselves into wrong culture, subculture, the macho violent subculture, and the gang is a form of identity. So what we want to do is we want to break that. And you're right, we must start with all our kids, even in affluent communities also. Mothers tend to um, reproduce the inequalities by babying and covering up for the boy child. So what we are saying, we are encouraging everybody because boy child, also don't want to give unnecessary attention to them. We also need to create a wholesome, responsible, young adult, young man that can take his right place. That's not in a macho way, but that can understand that he needs to help in the house. He needs to take responsibility. He needs to own up. Women's bodies are not sexual objects. We need to encourage them to treat their partners and also to have positive relationships with the opposite sex. Allow relationships, wholesome relationships um, with their partners. So I think for us, it's about creating that awareness, keeping us accountable, but also having the tough conversation. Because the problem is a lot of us as men abandon our kids. We're not the fathers, we don't play active roles. And so the problem is that get reproduced, that neglected child on the pep that's become then the gangster. He becomes the violent, he terrorizes the school, he's doing all of those things. So we're having workshops, we're having marches, we're getting men, and I really want to thank all the men that has generally responded to my appeal. Let's come forward, let's own up, let's take responsibility, and let's heal our communities. Let's show men in a positive light. Let's get our youngsters off the streets. Let them play sport. We're trying to get some sports NGOs to get our kids in sports and physical, so that we can channel the energy. And so we're calling on the faith-based organizations, the mosques, the churches in my area. They will all do the peace marches. We're also working closely with the primary school teachers there, and then we're also encouraging them, and we're doing role playing, and we're doing all of these positive things so that we can change our society. And you're right, it's across all the sectors, all the classes.
So, Faiz, what age groups are you targeting? And as you roll out this peace walk, I'm sure you realize as much as I do too, that after the 16 days of awareness is over, of activism against no violence, of no violence against women and children, do we go back to same old? Do we go back to square one? Because it seems that there isn't anything, there's no cohesive plan after the 16 days are over. It's almost as if we just go back to square one. We need to have programs that are sustainable and follows through for the entire year. We also need to identify age groups, and I think we've got to also look at the older lost youth. What are we doing about them? Because if we do not rehabilitate them, we're still going to have a lot of problems on our hands. So over to you. That's a load that I've put onto you. How are you going to, together with the NGOs, how is pardon, all of this being addressed?
Yeah. So the 16 days are just highlighting, but we make everyday awareness against the battle for gender equality, fighting against patriarchy, just like our commitment to supporting the fight for solidarity and love for our people in Palestine and the ending of the massacre and genocide. This jihad, this struggle against patriarchy and gender-based violence must be a 24/7. It must be in our conscious. We must practice it in our daily, not only on the platforms, but I must go home and I must do it in my home. I must be a good
Mm,
father. I must be a good brother. I must be a good son. I must be a exemplary leader in my community, not only the 16 days, but all the time. And so our target youth, look, we can't touch everybody. So we're starting out with our matriculants, your high school youth, but I think we should start even in your what's it, grade 7, your standard 5 boy child. So we're starting small. We don't have all the resources, But as we get more, as we can do more with workshops, we working with. Also, we calling on the mosques, we calling on the churches to partner with us on this exercise. And you're right. Look, I believe that we must have hope, and that hope and must be tied to our faith and also action. It's no use you become despondent and yeah, everybody's going back to square one. We must believe, we must act, and we must have faith in our common humanity. And so that for me is the key thing. Every day we try a little bit. We believe tawakkal to Allah, Allah will provide, but at the same time, ons maak hy kameel vas. We
Mm.
tie our rope,
A
and we
camel,
believe
yeah.
and use, and we believe that hope and action and faith is important components to produce the solidarity and love that we're talking about. I hope that helps.
Faiz, as a politician and a parliamentarian, I mean, you're very well aware of the situation in the Western Cape. You have the two very distinct areas. You have the very affluent suburbs, which just blows my mind when I look at the houses and the housing prices. They compare with pricing in the UK and the US and Europe. And then you have the Cape Flats, and the disparity is so great. It is absolutely heartbreaking. And then you tell yourself, or you ask yourself, how how can we expect um, people coming out of these areas and then seeing the rich being so lavish and careless about how they throw their money around? How can we have uh, kind of almost a balanced child or children coming out of our poorer communities? How are those type of situations being addressed? And I mean, you know what? If you've got the money, great. Live the high life. But the flaunting of it and the big divide is actually quite sinful. That's my one comment. My other comment is obviously the Western Cape is seen as the gangster and drug capital of South Africa. How are you guys as politicians? And I know it's not only up to you, I think civil society needs to rise up as well. What is it? How do we really take this scourge head on? We have to win this war. It is crazy that it is destroying our youth and future generations. So I've given you a whole lot there to
Those two
respond
questions,
to.
let me respond. So the first thing is that, we, for the last 15 years, we have an uncaring provincial government and a city government that maintains, I would argue, privilege, economic advantage, um, and they're not looking at how to deal with redress and dealing with the economic imbalances of the past. So you have a Zionist supporting DA city government and also provincial Western Cape government. They claim they govern well. They claim they're not corrupt. But I mean, we as Cape Townians know better. If you just ride 30 k's outside the leafy suburbs of Cape Town, you get the harsh reality, the Cape Flats, the gang areas, where there's neglect, where there's a failed state, where there's no services, there's no water, there's not even load shedding, there's no electricity in most of our areas. Um, and so that's the big challenge. We don't have a caring government here. And that creates the conditions for lawlessness and for crime and for the criminal economy to thrive. So I'm not in the game of blame gaming, but I think a lot of people are waking up to the DA. And a lot of our mosque have now said that they really haram to vote for the DA, because this is the same party that continues supporting the Zionists and the continued genocide and extinction and massacre of our beloved brothers and sisters in Palestine, and children and elderly and women. We see it on a daily basis, and whilst we can't lose hope, these are the people that enable them. Their organization that do that. So, I mean, we are in a war against the crime. Our national government is not doing enough. Civil society. I work with community-based organizations. I work with CPFs, community crime forums, and we try and do what we can. But there is also a willing buyer, willing seller. A lot of our
Mm,
people are
mm,
enslaved on drugs and on alcohol, so they don't have consciousness, they don't have taqwa, they don't have awareness. And I think that's the big problem. We want to create a sober nation, a sober people that can rise, that can claim agency. We want young people, youth, and women that says enough, that I will take my destiny with faith and with guidance of God Almighty. We will take our faith and we will build a better future. So I believe that on a daily basis, that's what we can do. That's what we struggle for. Look, we believe that addiction is a disease. I believe that. I have lots of family that is addicted, and we need more rehabs, but we also need support for this disease. Um, but we must be hard on the criminals that come to our areas, these drug lords. We know where they stay. We want city and law enforcement to go and close down these drug places. And so the fight continues. The jihad for a better life continues. The jihad for a sober nation continues. The jihad, the fight for claiming back our communities and streets. You know, the DA spends billions of rands on drone technology, just like the Israelis, and they don't care about our people on the Cape Town. They don't. They don't even help us with Dubs community police forums. They don't worry. If this was Camps Bay, if Camps Bay had to live every day under the yoke of terror, our kids can't even play in the streets. I mean, the other day I went to visit Anisha. She's an 8-year-old that has a bullet in the back. Um, and she can't take the bullet out because she will be paralyzed. I took a
mm.
teddy bear to her and I made a prayer and I said to her, look, this is now our reality, but there was the resilience on the family. And so why must kids endure this pain, the suffering constantly? So we must fight, we must make awareness, we must mobilize, and we must make the change. So sometimes I feel despondent, sometimes I feel overwhelmed, but then I just lift myself up because I need to continue being there for my community. I hope that helps.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Ameen. We salute you for all of the hard work you're putting in, and we do hope and pray that many more within our communities really decide to go this route. This is what being Muslim is all about. This is, about paying it forward. We want to make a difference. Let us be that change. Let's go out and do the dirty work. Because if we don't do it, who will be doing it? My final question then to you would be to give us the details of the peace walk. But one more thing, and I hope that I'm not throwing a curved ball at you, Faiz, but do you believe that Pagat has a role to play? We do know that there's been a history way back in the day when they fought very hard against drugs and gangsterism. They seem to be making a resurgence. How hopeful are you about their role in cleaning up the Cape Flats?
Look, I think I'll tell you the details now, but we welcome anyone that is part of the solution. I personally don't subscribe to vigilantism. I don't subscribe to people taking the law into their own hands, and so I certainly don't support some of the methods of Pagat. Um, I've been behind the scenes helping to get a lot of the old leaders of Pagat released on humanitarian grounds. So whilst I support the people and I appreciate their boldness, I don't support eye for an eye will make us all blind. So if they're going to march with us, we want a peaceful march. It is peaceful. It is peaceful. We want to encourage even gangs to reform, to change and to mend their ways, to gang leaders to reform and mend their ways. So that's my response on Pagat. I have a good relationship with Pagat. We've shared a platform on the Palestinian solidarity and the marches, and we all support. But that is my view. We must allow that we are a constitutional and law-abiding country, and so we can't go about shooting and killing and maiming drug dealers. They must be brought to book. The law must, and also we have, understand the frustrations of our community because sometimes police are complicit in all of this. So I'm
Mm,
not naive to all of these things, but we must expose this thing because, like I said, we're not in the Wild West where we take law into our own hands because what you do, you breed more violence.
Mm.
You breed more violence, and that is what we want. We don't want violence. We want a peace, safe, secure communities on the Cape Flats. We want our kids to thrive. We want our kids to live in harmony, and we must have a way to deal with conflict and peace in a way that resolves things. Because if I grow up in a house where violence is the only answer, that's my only response. If I can't
Mm.
communicate with my partner, I will use force. And so that mindset must change. South Africans are suffering from a lot of trauma. Trauma of poverty, trauma of abuse, trauma of apartheid, trauma of slavery, trauma of colonialism, all of those things. So we must break the self inflicted pain that we do have. So that's my view on that. The march is at in another park. I'll send you the poster. It's ten
We've got
o'clock.
the
I mean,
poster. Thank you.
oh,
We
you got
have
it.
got the poster. It's
Thanks so
flashing
much.
on screen as we speak.
Thanks
Okay,
so
now
much. I
just
really appreciate it.
right.
Alaikum
Okay, so
shukran for having me. I really appreciate it. And
thank
salam
you
to all of the
indeed.
listeners.
Walaikum
Thank
salam.
you.
And all the very best for a very successful march. That, of course, is member of the National Assembly of South Africa, Faiez Jacobs, talking about the peace walk for raising a boy child. And that's happening in Hanover Park. And that is this Saturday, the 9th of December at 10 o'clock. Please go out in your droves. It is exactly 9:42. News and views on Salam Media. Standing by to talk with us is Abdul Alim Hamza from IRSA.